House Appropriations is reconvening after extensive testimony this afternoon. First up is House Bill 82. Is there a motion on the bill?
There is a motion, Mr. Chairman. Move the bill.
Second.
Moved by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Stiff. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I've got an amendment, and I'll, as we talked about the needs of the project, and will, if I get a second, kind of explain that I think some of these projects maybe wait.
Second.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, what I would do on Fontenelle is in there put language that gives the governor access to, if this develops, but gives him access to the LISRA to fund it over the course of the biennium.
So it's just a modification of the funding from general
No funds to LISRA.
governor's directive authority to spend lesser dollars for this agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Same amount of money?
Same amount, 21,810. Mm-hmm.
25 million. Well, yeah, he was.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely all right. I'm looking at Goshen. Yeah, 25 million. Thank you for the correction.
Discussion. Representative Simpson, could you give us your input on this, please?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a big fan of this Fontenelle Reservoir. I really believe, and it may be 10 or 15 years from now, but boy, I believe it's going to be a lifesaver for our state. So whether it comes from general or any other account is fine with me, but I'd sure like to keep it in.
Okay. While you're testifying, why don't you walk us through the other two? You're our water expert on here, and particularly the need for the money and how soon it needs to occur in terms of whether or not we appropriate this through this bill or through the next session.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could we maybe just vote on this amendment?
Yeah,
Because I may want to follow up his suggestion with further amendments.
Okay. Does everyone understand the amendment? Mary Lee, you understand? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, go ahead. Now my question. Talk to us a little bit about these other ones, Evan.
All right. You noticed in the water omnibus bill, referring to Goshen, that we put $2.3 million in Goshen's hands to complete the environmental and design. I can't imagine doing an environmental and a design that big, burning through $2.3 million in the next year. But I've been told, I don't know where the source came from, that Nebraska has actually set aside some money. I'm not opposed to setting aside some money here, but I just think we're a year in advance. But gosh, if Nebraska's kicked in, I suggest we match whatever amount they put forward.
Okay, further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd propose another amendment, and I would reduce on page 2, I would delete lines 7 through 14 and renumber. Now that's what that's doing, is removing the funding for the Goshen Irrigation District, and I just want the folks here to know that we're going to have to fund that, and we agree that we have to fund it. Just trying to, I think that's find out what Nebraska's done if we have to come back in a conference committee, but if not, I think certainly in the, if we've got that much time, we can certainly come back in the supplemental year, just with where we are with our general fund dollars, which is what we're doing here, in LISRA dollars, that just trying to wait before we lose the use of those funds to generate other revenue.
Further discussion.
Question.
Question on the amendment of deleting lines 7 through 14 on page 2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried. Any further amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a third amendment, and that would be deleting on page 2, line 15 through, I believe, 20. And that's the La Prelle Dam. And listening to Senator Hicks this morning, it sounds like the effort there is going to be to use the infrastructure funds that are available. And if that fails to produce, then we can come back and do that. I think we've all recognized the need there too, but that was kind of the recommendation I heard him make this morning. So if somebody heard that differently than I then.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
what I thought I heard was that there was a potential for the need for an indeterminate match.
So, Mr. Chairman, I asked that question. Do we need money for a match? And I was not answered affirmatively that we were, that it was that they felt that they had the mechanism there in the infrastructure bill to do that. But if they do, it's out far enough that we could provide the match. Is that fair direction?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A follow-up on that. We also have, as I stated this morning, 75 million in the budget for matching of infrastructure dollars. And so that could be accessed as well.
That's right.
So my recollection, and I don't know if anyone in here, I have the document up on my desk, but the matching dollars for the irrigation system was 5, 10, and I think 25% on the infrastructure bill. I mean, some of the lowest matching dollars are required on the water projects as compared to some of the other projects. Does that ring a bell? Okay, yeah, I've got it upstairs, but.
Dan, do you know?
Yeah. So, and the total cost of La Prelle, actually, let's go ahead with this, and then I can form an amendment if we come in the conference committee. I can pull out the infrastructure bill, find out what those percentages are, and we could tailor this so it can only be used for matching funds with infrastructure dollars. So I think that would facilitate what we're doing, okay? So on in favor of the amendment. Any other further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. And I'll try to get something together when we come into the conference committee.
Mr. Chairman, remember that the 30 million is just half of what this project's going to cost too. So whatever number you come up with, you
Yeah.
technically need to double it.
Yeah, I think the testimony was that it was going to, actually 80 million is what the newest number that came out. So it's not even half. So yeah, I'm familiar with that. But we'll just find the percentage gaps and we'll find a number that we can put in there on an amendment. Okay, as amended. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
further discussion and may have an amendment following that, but in subsection B, it discusses the use of these funds cannot be transferred for any other purpose. But then if you go on to page 3, it says any unexpended, unobligated general funds appropriated under subsection A shall revert to the water development account. And first for discussion, I'm not sure that we want really what I would call a sleight of hand of moving general funds to the water accounts without, because they would revert back to the water accounts. I think we want to know what's happening. And so I'd like a little discussion and then my amendment may be forthcoming.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that's language that we've seen historically in our water bill for the funding language, that it reverts back to the water account from which it came, which is probably how this bill was crafted, not anticipating that we were going to use general funds rather than water account 3 or water account 2. So I think the point is well taken.
Mr. Chairman,
ahead.
notice the date on page 3, line 5 is 2032 is when it would be consumed by the water account number 3. That's 10 years out. And now we've stripped so much of money out of this. You know, remember it started at 182 million. I'm not sure that it matters much because I guess it does on the LaPrel money. That would be the only one that would really have any money left over in it.
I think that we could end it on page 1, sorry, page 3, line 1, after purpose. And then if you want to clarify, we should say that any general funds or other funds not used for this project shall revert to where they came from. Because we've got LSRA in it now, and we've got general fund.
Now, would they revert the following year though, or at the end of the biennium?
Well, I think we need to have sufficient time. We know that these projects are going to take 2 or 3 or 4 years. So, and they can only be used for the projects they're expended on.
Right.
So that, I don't think we want to vert for at least 4 or 6 years.
I agree with you.
27 or 28?
Let's do 27. Is that a budget year? We'll find the right date.
28.
Yeah, so 27 is better on general fund time.
27.
27. So, Mary Lee, what we'd like to do is, you want to make an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that, I would move on line 2 of page 3, after general funds or LSRA, since that's what we have done on the first page, appropriated under subsection A of this section shall revert to the general fund or LSRA, dependent upon which account they originated.
Just say originating fund. Or general fund and, yeah.
And then they would count which they were appropriated on, and then change that on line 5, 2032, we'll change that to 2027. So that's 5 years from now.
Second.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason I think we need to have it go back to the account which it originated is just to make sure that's where it started. And I fear if we use the language in which the account originated, it may be seen as originating in the water development account. And so I think it needs to specify that if it came from the general fund and LSRA, it needs to go back to the general fund or LSRA.
Okay. Mary Lee, you got that?
Where does that sentence start? Are we staying with notwithstanding, or are you getting rid of part of that?
Mary Lee, will be leaving that on page 2 after general funds, insert or LSRA.
Mhm.
And then all of line 3 stays the same, except at the end of it, delete water and delete development in line 4. And we're going to insert, so it would read, shall revert to the general fund or LSRA, whichever
We could just say shall revert to the respective funds.
respective funds, general fund or LSRA. Something along those lines, and hopefully our LSO legal staff can craft it properly.
Okay, everyone understand the amendment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? That motion carries. So my next question is, is there any purpose for after what we just did to make it effective immediately? I mean, what difference does it make?
I think maybe, Mr. Chairman, if we could look at the director, is there anything that would happen between now and July at Fontenelle that would require any of this immediately? So no. Thank you.
Well, it'll,
Doesn't matter.
yeah. Yeah, that's all goldenrod, basically. It's the pleasure of the committee.
Leave it alone, keep it simple.
Okay, we'll leave it. All right. As amended, any other amendments?
Question on the bill.
Roll call, as amended.
Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz, Representative Simpson,
Aye.
Representative Stith,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. All right,
Ayes
next,
as amended.
Mr. Chairman,
please, go ahead.
so is this going to go down to get on general file today then?
Yep.
And so what I was going to say is, or suggest is if Representative Simpson's going to be there to do the water bill, maybe he could be paying attention if we're still stuck here, that he could manage this as well.
I'd be glad to, only I need to stay with you for a little while longer. I've got to vote on 97, so.
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Okay,
So, and we'll, Mary Lee, maybe we can send those amendments to him.
send them to both of us.
It probably won't be heard until tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it probably, I will turn in the standing committee report as soon as I can, but chances are it's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'll email them to Representative Simpson once I
Okay.
got them typed.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next bill up is 97. We have a motion on the bill.
Move the bill.
Yeah, bill has been moved by Representative Stith, seconded by
I'll second it.
Representative Simpson. All right, go ahead.
Thank
Any
you.
amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment.
Okay.
And I believe everybody got a copy. If you look at it, the bulk of the amendment are lines 9 through 19. And what the amendment does,
Is on what page?
do you have a copy of the amendment?
I don't either, Andy,
I
so
have
talk
plenty
please.
if anybody doesn't.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We always want you to talk, Dan.
So why don't we withdraw the?
Come on up.
We'll
That's all right.
start,
I mean, yeah, just
we'll put the brakes on.
join the conference.
We'll put the brakes on.
I just spoke up. You didn't take the amendment.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I missed being able to speak earlier, and I appreciate you letting me speak now. I support this bill, obviously. I think it's well needed. There's many out there in my area that they're asking for it. I just had a small comment to say that New York State actually is a longer period of time between when they shut off their party changing affiliation, and it's actually 4 months and 8 days. So they close theirs on February 14th, and their primary is June 22nd. So I just wanted to let you know that New
Who was that
York
again?
State,
Who was that again, please?
New York State is actually 4 months and 8 days. If we did,
So Dan, do you know when they have to put your name in to run in New York?
I did not look that up, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Question.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
So Dan, how about, by absentee? So any form of changing has to be done 4 months ahead?
I do not have the bill in front of me, and I would like to refer to the actual bill bringer if we're going to dig into it deeper.
Bo, come on up.
Repeat the question, please.
My concern, Senator Beitman, was if I were an absentee voter, would I still have to, and so I was curious with what New York does. Is it all votes, anybody that wants to change their ballots, irregardless of how they do it, has to be the 4 months?
Mr. Chairman, I'm here to talk about my Wyoming bill, not New York. I'm not an expert in New York laws. I just noticed the NCSL put out a a list of 9 states that have closed primaries. New York was one of those 9 states, and they vary based on, many months before to, they're closed. We're not closed. That's the idea to get this bill, is to close our primary and be the 10th state to do so.
I was just trying to gather information, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
It's okay. Okay, further, do we have a motion? Go ahead. Representative Schwartz.
Yeah, I would like to move an amendment. Would be standing committee number 1. I've given you all copies of it. The meat of it is lines 9 through 19. And what it does, it creates the opportunity for a political party to opt out of the provision requiring the timeline for change. So in the case of my particular minority party or the Constitutional Party or the Libertarian Party, if they opt to say you can change your party affiliation at any time, that's their freedom. But if a party chooses to endorse this, that's their option as well. And then the lines 1 through 7 are essentially conforming to the rest of the document, the rest of the bill. And I would move this.
We have a second. I'll second for discussion. Any questions on it? Any comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I hate, this is complicated already, and I hate to complicate it by allowing every party to opt in and out, and I'm just opposed to it.
Okay, any further discussion? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, I respectfully disagree that it complicates it. I think it's actually creating the opportunity for our political parties to determine, I mean, this is about political parties and affiliation. And I think demanding that a particular party do something that is not what they prefer is more complicating. Give them the freedom to choose.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No,
That motion carries. Is adopted. Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend on page 2, line 22, where the phrase is "an elector," change that to "a registered elector." So adding the word "registered" in front of the word "elector." And if I can get a second, I can explain the purpose. Mr. Chairman, thank you. So the purpose here is, I think this amendment carries out the purpose that the sponsor indicated in our prior testimony today, that that the bill is not trying to prevent a first-time voter from having to register in May. Whereas as presented, as drafted without this amendment, by saying that an elector may declare a change of party affiliation only by May, that declaring it, although I think the intent was to go to unaffiliated registered voters, by its plain language right now, it would apply to first-time voters. And so by adding the word registered, it would mean that a first-time voter could show up on election day, register, and pick their party affiliation on election day.
Okay, does everyone understand the amendment? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So I've had some concern on the ability for people doing an absentee registration and the ability to change that. And so I'd like to change some language there if I can get a second.
Second.
So what I would do on page 3, line 4, is insert, or when requesting an absentee ballot, then they would be able to, on page 3, line 11, after election, we could strike the balance of that and strike general election. And then, so what you'd be able to do is, if you were doing it by absentee ballot, you could change your registration up to that date.
Do you have a written amendment? So we can look at it?
Yep. So on page 3,
Go ahead.
line 4,
Mary Lee, do you have a copy of this?
I do not.
I'll get it to you. On page 3, line 4,
Go ahead.
after 225209, insert or when requested an absentee ballot. So this is the new language that we have here. It says for a primary election and now a registered elector may declare or change party affiliation by completing an application signed and notarial officer, with county clerk prior to the first day, which an application for nomination may be filed under 2520, or when requesting an absentee ballot, he can make the change as well.
So the change is or when
Or
requested.
when requesting an absentee ballot.
Okay, and one more change, right?
And then on line 11, on line 11 after election, you would strike the rest of that line through primary, and on line 12 through general election. So it would say after the primary election and not less than 14 days before the general election, or when requesting an absentee ballot for the general election.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Everyone got that?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
could you just sort of explain the practical effect of this, how it plays out in the primary?
If you were voting through an absentee ballot, you would be able to, at that time, change your party.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
can we ask the sponsor of the bill how he feels about that amendment?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not able to hear what he's saying.
What he said is that it kind of defeats the purpose of the bill. And so everyone would vote absentee that wants to switch their vote over. And I think that's probably a reasonable interpretation. Okay? So does everyone understand the amendment? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No,
That motion carries. As amended, any further amendments to the bill? Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Mr. Chairman, I would move do not pass.
There's a motion that do not pass. Second. And been seconded.
Roll call.
Roll call on a do not pass.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Didn't Representative Stith and I make the initial motion?
The
move
the
the
motion
bill?
was to move the bill so we could discuss it. There wasn't a motion on whether it was to pass or how we would kick it out of committee.
Very good. I just hate the negative connotation here. It's going to flip the results.
So the motion is it does not pass. And so an aye vote means what? Means
An aye
no.
vote kills it.
And a no vote means yes.
Would the bringer of the motion allow us to flip that motion so we don't get a lot of confusion out there?
No, actually, it's critical that its motion is in that language.
All right.
That would not be friendly.
So, Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure when we're voting that I know what I'm doing here. So if I vote aye, it's do not pass.
Correct.
Is that correct? If I vote no, then what is the,
Yeah, that's exactly right. An aye vote is you're supporting the motion that it do not pass, and a no vote is you want the bill to pass.
okay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, just
Go
a
ahead.
quick question. So what are the consequences either way? If the majority votes aye, what then happens?
We're just articulating the belief,
Okay.
the position of the House Appropriations, and
Okay.
the floor will decide what it wants to do with the bill.
Okay.
Okay. Roll call.
Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz. Representative Simpson.
No.
Representative Stith.
No.
Representative Walters. Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
5
Okay,
ayes, 2 noes for a do not pass.
that concludes our business. We need to run back and do general file, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for your time.